Okie dokie, let's get started. So kia ora everybody, welcome. Really great to see you all here today. And we're so happy that you came along to join us. And we are here today with Athol Steward, who is one of the activists who worked against the seabed mine off Patia in the South Taranaki Bight. And many of you, we've talked about this campaign before, you've contributed to this campaign over the past years. So you know that this would have been the first and one of the largest seabed mining operations of its kind in the world. And luckily this year, we've just had the Court of Appeal uphold our objection to the mine. And this campaign's run over many years, and it's really been a people-powered campaign. And it started with concerned coastal communities who all banded together and formed Kiwis Against Seabed Mining, or CASM. I know some of you work with CASM as well. And CASM brought in Greenpeace in partnership. The local iwi and Taranaki also mounted opposition, and there were lots of other environmental and local groups involved. And Athol was very much a person, you know, he's a local doctor in Whanganui, and he saw something in his community that was happening that he thought was wrong, and stood up to take action against it. And so that's what we're going to hear about today, his journey along that path. And while Athol is speaking, if you've got any questions for him, you can chuck them in the chat box on Zoom. If you look at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a little chat icon you can click on and you can pop them straight in there. Or if you're watching on Facebook, you can pop them in the comments as well. And we'll field those through to Athol after he's talked to us. And any questions that we don't get time to answer today, we'll make sure we send an email and follow up. So all the questions will be answered, even if we can't get through all of them today. So I think that's all I need to let you know. So without further ado, I will hand over to Athol, and we might just take a sec to make sure his screen is shared and everything's ready to roll. Whoop. Great. And we might just need to unmute Athol, Ali. There we go.
All right. Kia ora, everybody. Ata marie. Glorious day here in Whanganui, and an opportunity to thank Jess and Ellie and the team at Greenpeace for inviting me to talk about my journey, and in my books a very important one. So it is an honor to be asked to talk to an audience about ocean adventure activism. Now, I'll just say right from the start that I'm a born again activist. This is something which has emerged since about 2013. I've always been aware of the environment, but when I heard in 2013 that a playground that I'd enjoyed for 20 odd years was under threat of being mined, a massive open cast mine. The company who has put forward its application was going to mine 50 million tons per annum of our ocean. That's 8,000 tons an hour, with disastrous consequences as far as I'm concerned. I felt a great need to do something, and a great responsibility. So it was, for me, a wake-up call to actually do something. And as Jess said, this just seemed wrong at many different levels. So, as I said, I've enjoyed the ocean. I dive the reefs regularly, which I can tell you are quite beautiful and abundant with life, and also fished the waters which again are just abundant with fish. But it was time to give back, and so hence I appeared at the hearings when it was before the EPA, and then subsequently when shockingly the EPA in 2017 approved TTR's application. I thought it was time to actually become active and protect the environment. So the first campaign was called Walk the Walk for Our Ocean, and that was a campaign that was supported by my family and friends and community, which is very important. And the first campaign was walking 407 kilometers along the coast from Raglan to Whanganui, which I'll talk about a little bit further, but it was an amazing experience to be in close contact with our marine environment for 16 days. So activism comes in many different forms, and I think a lot of you will be familiar with civil disobedience, passive resistance, protests, the lobbyists, and then I've sort of coined this phrase that there's adventure activism, and there are a lot of people that have done this very successfully. Malcolm Tunbridge, which is the world record holder for the deepest free dive, a New Zealander, he swam the Cook Strait just recently, just to raise awareness about the wildlife and endangered species in our waters. Lewis Pugh is South African, but now a British citizen, and he's swum all the major oceans in the world to highlight climate change and ice melt. He also amazingly swam a kilometer of the Arctic Ocean. So he actually coined a phrase, because he also swam up the Thames or down the Thames River, one way or the other, and he got out the water and walked to Parliament to meet the then Prime Minister, and he coined the phrase speedo activism or speedo diplomacy. So it comes in different forms, and I think we can all become campaigners and activists in some form, because we've all got a talent, we've all got an instrument that we can use in order to make a point. So this over here is a photograph of one of the more recent campaigns, and this was a marathon ocean swim. I think you can see in the distance Taranaki just behind the boat. We're actually 20 kilometers offshore, and I'm swimming over the mine site. And this is beautiful, pristinely clean water with abundant life in it. And I swam a diagonal cross over the mine site, 2 legs. One was 6 kilometers and the other one was 7, depicting a cross, meaning a no-go zone. But it was a fantastic adventure to be in the very ocean that they intend to mine. So let's get into a little bit about the sort of the logic and the practicality behind becoming a campaigner or an activist. And one always looks for inspiration. And my dear departed friend Chris Cresswell, he was a Green Party member and a Greenpeace member, and his environmental Bible was the Lorax, and I think you can all read quote over there, and this is actually about caring, and just doing whatever you can in order to stop something which you believe is not right. It doesn't fit. So here's a photograph of us outside New Plymouth. A lot of you will recognise the Te Warawara Bridge, just outside New Plymouth. This was at approximately the 200k mark, and Chasm organised a hui into town, so we walked as a group. It was great to have support when you do these sorts of things, and I can tell you there is lots of support out there. I can't think of anybody I came across who was a dissenter, so that was encouraging and very pleasing. When you do these campaigns, things pop up out of the blue. We were parked up at Whanganui, and a lady appeared with a painting she had done. This is actually about oil exploration, and actually saying no. And she donated that painting to me and to the cause. That little things like that just do inspire you to carry on and make you feel as though you're doing the right thing. And you can see our banner that we dragged around along the coast. So motivation, probably the biggest motivator is the great sense of responsibility that I felt when I heard about the seabed mining threat. One beautiful ocean, with abundant life in it, and a huge open cast mining threat. It is very much about kaitiakitanga, guardianship, and that certainly was a very strong driver. I also have a very strong bond with the ocean, and I do believe that it is a source of life for us. And I often quote, there's no green without blue. So I think we must also appreciate the greater responsibility. It's not just about protecting our coastline in the South Taranaki Bight. It's also about the precedent that this shallow water open cast seabed mine will pose. Because if it goes ahead, there will be debatably the best precedent that you can ever get for a marine mine, being a New Zealand example. And so this will effectively open the door for seabed mining elsewhere in the world. And let us not be hoodwinked over here. There are big international investors here that are waiting for a new frontier that they can exploit in order to hoard even more money. So it's the precedent-setting aspect of this mine, the strategic factor that is important to appreciate, and hence even more reason to fight with whatever you've got to stop them. And it's also about the future and for our children and our children's children. And I'm proudly a grandfather for the first time, and I watch with great delight as my grandchild Archie grows up, and he's just fascinated with the natural world, and I want him to be able to enjoy our coast over here in the South Taranaki Bight. So I did mention, having a team, very much a family affair. My two sons joined me on the walk from Raglan to Whanganui. This is Jonathan, my youngest son, in New Plymouth. And we deposited a bit of iron sand near the wand. And we had these two little fellows enjoying the sand rather than mining the sand. Okay, so the campaigns, as I said, it's a team. It's been a team effort. It's been a family affair, and they've all been adventures with a purpose. And I can tell you that the adventure and the surprises just kept on coming with all of the campaigns that we did. As I said, we did Walk the Walk, and the most recent one is Making Waves. So this is an adventure sport type campaign, and it's sort of well suited to what I'm able to offer. I have shared this with Jess, but I've always been a competitive athlete, and spent long hours training, spent plenty of time and energy on competitive triathlon. I was selected for the New Zealand age group team in 2015 and went to the Canadian World Triathlon Championships. And I mean, that was a fantastic experience, but it did feel self-indulgent. And it was around this time, of course, that the seabed mining threat was around. And I thought it would be much better, more fulfilling to dedicate it to a greater purpose, and hence doing these kind of athletic campaigns. So that's just a little personal interest story that I wanted to share with you. So carrying on with just some bullet points around the features of a campaign, I did feel that it needed to be something of, that had public interest, that would catch the eye of the public, because what we're trying to achieve here is public awareness, not only about the threat of seabed mining, but public awareness about our amazing ocean out here. It's species diversity, threatened species like the pygmy blue whale, Maui's dolphin, and then an amazing species variety of sponges. The last count was 26, which are very impressive. I can tell you that with first-hand experience, and I actually dived this weekend on a reef and just saw the most amazing sponges again. So, it needed to be something with public interest, needs to be relevant. Swimming in the ocean over the mine site, I think hit the spot, and also walking along the coast from Raglan to Whanganui, because that's a coastline that could be affected by other mines. So, the South Taranaki Bight is not the only place where they could mine. And I just felt that a cake sale and a sausage sizzle were just not going to do it. So here's my family. Andrea, Lloyd, and Jonathan, and my wife, and they constantly at my side. My sons, taking part in the campaigns. Andrea on the left is part of the media world in her professional life, and she did a lot of the comms and the media work, because I'm a bit of a dummy when it comes to that. And the boys are just a tower of strength. Now you might ask why I did this, and it was just a great determination and a great sense of responsibility, and I'll do whatever it takes to stop seabed mining. So, I'll get in the water to keep the miners out of the water. I've said that a few times. And who knows if the Supreme Court appeal is successful, watch this space, because we'll be doing something as big as we can. So the other, being a professional person in a science-based profession, there is some evidence that activism works. And so the Michigan State University has recently done a study which showed they compared states and CO2 emissions, and found that in those states where environmental activism was practiced more, that they could actually trend a greater reduction in CO2 emissions. As I've said before, time to care, time to give back, time to take responsibility, and also because I can. And I think that applies to many of us in this audience and out there, that actually you can do something. Here's a photograph. This is when I finished swimming the cross, and that was our salute to the mining company: stay out. What's not shown here, that as I finished the swim, a pod of dolphins swam around our boat. You explain that. That was freakish. And that's with some of my team on board on the day. So the objectives of my campaign, number one is awareness. Sort of letting people know, and the New Zealand public need to know that there's an experimental mine that has been proposed off our coast, and it's a massive open cast mine. As I've said, 8,000 tons an hour. They only harvest 10% of that, and they dump 90% back in the water, which itself smothers the ocean floor. But then there's an enormous plume that has unpredictable effects on life and nearby reefs. The promotional and educational aspects of a campaign are very important, and to again let people know that our waters do have endangered species in them, that there is an incredible abundance of life, and I think it's one of the healthiest fisheries around New Zealand. While we're on this point, I've put in brackets PRL. Now, I would encourage everybody to go onto the Project Reef Life website and look at their video. They've taken incredible video of our reefs in the South Taranaki Bight, right in the line of the plume if mining happens. And it is quite stunning. It is just abundant, it's colorful. 26 species of sponges and over 100 species of animal life have now been documented on our South Taranaki Bight reefs. And the final objective is fundraising. This is just on the beach prior to us starting our marathon swim along the coast. This was a 23-kilometer swim that we did from Patia to Maufānau Beach, just outside Whanganui. The iwi were amazingly supportive of us. There were karakias and well wishers there. We met up with people on the beach. This is a typical West Coast scene. This is near Waverley, and we found a group of ladies walking down the beach. They'd heard about the walk and rendezvoused with us. Just a beautiful photograph of the ocean. This is 100 kilometers into the walk, and it's on a beach completely isolated and deserted somewhere near Marakopa. That was a 100k mark. Campaign recipe, and I'm onto my penultimate slide. So determination, and I put a quote in which I dedicated to Lewis Pugh, the marathon swimmer, and there's nothing more powerful than the made-up mind. Now, I think determination is an absolute key ingredient. You've just got to have self-belief that you can do whatever. You need to be able to inspire people. And on this note, I don't think you should be negative or doomsday sort of person. I think you need to be lively and upmarket, and that does take people along with you. Team effort I've mentioned. You need a really good campaign strategy, and I was fortunate enough to have professional people who had done campaigns before, who assisted me. And you need to have delegated roles. Needs to be relevant, as I've mentioned. Know your facts. You need to research your topic thoroughly. You don't want to be caught out on any inaccuracies. And then, as I said, use your talents. And everybody out there, I believe, has a talent or an instrument that they can use. That's on a walk, just the most deserted beaches that you can imagine. And you can see all the iron sand over there. You don't need to go into the ocean to harvest yourself some iron sand. And then the benefits. So obviously creating environmental awareness, achieving your stated goals, and so far we have been successful. We're on the board with two very significant victories, one in the High Court and the latest comprehensive decision against the mining company to reject their application. And then from a personal point of view, I must emphasize that that campaigning and doing something which you truly believe in is it's a fascinatingly rewarding experience. When you do things that scare you, there's an excitement factor, but it is also a great privilege, and I feel privileged that I've been able to do this. Along the journey, you meet fascinating people. Quite out of the blue, I made contact with Jess because they came across a documentary that was made about making waves, and now have a relationship with Greenpeace and lovely members of the team there. So there are lots and lots of benefits that come out of doing these campaigns. One of the other things that's very important is you better understand yourself, your limitations, but more importantly, you appreciate your potential, which will surpass what you imagine. And probably time to start wrapping up, but this is at the end of the walk from Raglan to Whanganui. We had over 100 people greet us on the beach and walk part of the last leg, and there were dogs and children and horses and lots of very motivated, dedicated people. So I've got lots to be grateful for having done these various campaigns. It's a fulfilling experience, and I would encourage all of you out there just to do whatever you've thought about, put into action. So and I'd welcome any feedback or questions. I'll just show you my T-shirt. These were our Making Waves T-shirts, and then we've got our precious ocean on the back. So, but anyway, so that's the presentation, and I'll hand over to you and Jess.
Thanks so much, Athol. That was really, really interesting, and I really love the approach of taking what you love in life already and you know, in your case, it's extreme sports. That's not what it is for me, but, you know, taking that and using it for good. And I also really liked what you're talking about bringing in the strengths from all of the team around you, from your family members and people in your community, and that we are so much stronger together. And the other thing that struck me, well, on one of your slides with the woman who came to meet you with the sign that she'd had from the No Oil and Gas, campaigning against the oil drilling, and how, you know, we've been struggling for decades to deal with the fallout of extractive industries that we've let just run wild. Why would we be considering opening up our seeds to this new experimental kind of extraction? It just seems so bonkers. But thank you for standing up to it and for all that you've done to raise awareness about it as well. Now, I've got some questions for you from the audience. So, first question, what do you think it is? You mentioned a few different examples of kind of adventure activism. What do you think it is about this that works or kind of captures people's imagination?
So, you know, I enjoy sport and adventure type sports. I think it's got public appeal. So, you know, sport has its has its own profile. So you actually are levering off, you know, sport as a lever. And you know, I think most people are quite interested in some sort of adventure, because there's always a personal story attached to it. So those were, you know, that was part of the reason for doing it, but also because it's one of my talents, and fortunately I'm, you know, blessed still with good health and try and remain reasonably fit. So I don't know if that answers the question in part.
I think so, and I think it's you know, for those of us who can't really imagine swimming a marathon, it's pretty captivating to watch somebody else attempt to do that. Nick wants to know, while you were swimming, I guess, were you ever afraid that some big sea creature would bump into you on porpoise?
Well, I was hoping for a pygmy whale to come by. That would have been pretty sensational. But I know what you're talking about. You know, the shark threat, and actually some of my closest friends said to me, you know, you're mad. Well, that was part of the reason why I did it, because people were saying those sorts of things. So I knew it had struck some chord. So yeah, you know, I think the shark threat is more in our minds as a fear rather than being real. But I did consider that, and actually I had a photograph of sitting on the boat just before I dived in the water to start the swim. And it was a bit like standing on the bungee platform. You know, your brain is saying, no, this is against life preservation, but you've just got to do it. And once I was in the water, those fears about sharks, for instance, just disappeared, because I decided to use the might and the strength of Tangaroa to just keep me going, rather than you know, irrational fears. But having said that, I was half an hour into the first leg of the swim, and I did notice a shape behind me, and so you know, I thought, well, the best thing is to ignore it. But as I came around for the second stroke, I did actually pick up what was following me, and it was a very large kingfish, inquisitive kingfish, just coming up to say good morning. And it was a beautiful sight, and that was just one of the creatures that we saw. So a happy ending.
Yeah. Very much. I just wanted to share, Colleen put in the comments as well when we were talking about adventure activism, that potentially it's great as well because it's a little bit less confrontational for the general public to kind of get behind, and as a good engagement point. Yvonne wants to ask how to start getting the publicity for a campaign like yours when you're kind of starting from zero, building up. How do you begin that?
So social media. Now I'm a bit of a dummy when it comes to that. So I was very reliant on the likes of my daughter and people who were more computer savvy than me. But social media is very important. And look, you've just got to put yourself out there, put your campaign out there. Start with your local community. Because you'll already have a network that you can use, and approach local newspapers, radio stations, and away you go. It really is. It's not a difficult thing to do. It's just that that desire, that will to do it. You want to do it. And if you've got the right people and you can use different talents, away you go. So Walk the Walk for our ocean was the first one, and I had no prior experience of launching a campaign, but we just started publicizing it on Facebook, and created a page. And we started getting followers, and then RNZ got interested, and the New Zealand Herald and Maori television got to hear about the walk, and so it snowballs. It just gathers its own momentum eventually.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people underestimate. I know when we first connected, I had seen a piece that was published in the Whanganui Chronicle about what it was that you were doing, and you had reached out and had a relationship with that kind of local level paper. And I think people kind of underestimate sometimes, reaching out, A, how positive the response can be, and B, building each of those little pieces, it turns into a mountain fairly quickly.
It does.
Bridget wanted to say that it's so inspirational to hear what individual conviction can lead to. We see people like Greta Thunberg and Malala, but giving the detail behind how that happens is really interesting. I just wanted to say thank you. So another question for you though. So in today's kind of politics and in the media, there seems to be this bent towards negativity, but you really talked about caring, the power of caring, and giving people hope. What do you say to people who might feel kind of nervous about speaking up about something in a positive and hopeful way in this kind of environment?
So if I'm getting the drift of the question, I do believe that you need to consider all the aspects of what you're campaigning for, because the way that the mining company, for instance, have portrayed their operation is that it's going to be beneficial for the New Zealand public, and it's going to generate jobs and foreign currency and all of those sorts of things. So they've projected as being positive. However, we have got an environment which is not a desert. It is something which is abundant and worth caring for. So rather than being confrontational and looking for a fight, actually, once you've considered all the facts, whatever is out there, then you commit yourself to what you think is worth defending. So I hope I'm in part answering the question, but I feel that maybe I'm not just hitting the mark. And if you want to come back and rephrase or re-ask that's fine. But I do believe that being positive is more successful. I mean, ants are attracted to sugar and honey. So, that would be my approach.
Yeah, and I think there's something really powerful about coming from a place of conviction rather than coming from spoiling for a fight. I think there's something really powerful in that. Joan wants to ask, and I can answer some of this, but I think, so she wants to know, is Greenpeace involved in ending deep sea mining around the world? Are we active at the UN to prevent further approvals and that sort of thing? But I think I can talk a little bit about what Greenpeace is doing, Ath, but I think maybe if you want to touch on how this seabed mine, you talked about it in your presentation, but that precedent-setting nature in terms of how this will impact the international work, and then I can talk a little bit about the kind of international context a bit more.
Yeah, so I mean, what Jess and I are talking about is marine mining. So deep sea mining is technically different. It's in the very deep ocean, and there've been attempts to do that around the world for various minerals, phosphate, for instance, but the mining off the South Taranaki coast is shallow water seabed mining. So it's in water less than 100 meters deep, and we know that 90% of biota survives in the first 100 meters of water. So the destruction of life, of the scale of destruction is far greater. Not to detract from very rare and precious species that are in very deep water, but shallow water mining is close to inshore reefs, which we know important for breeding of all species, plant and animal, and also it threatens beaches. So it's different, but both forms of mining are unacceptable, and we do need to stop a precedent, because once you've got a precedent, then you have a flow-on effect.
Yeah, and so they're technically slightly different types of mining in the sense that they're in different levels of water, but a lot of the risks are very similar. And what we've found with this work is, as Athol's been saying, this sets a precedent for what could be allowed in other places. And all around the world, there are plenty of companies getting ready to deep sea mine. And as Joan alluded to, the UN is currently in the process of setting the rules for what deep sea mining will be allowed under the International Seabed Authority. And what we've seen coming out of the International Seabed Authority is very concerning. There's a lot of industry influence happening in there. There seems to be not a lot of concern about doing environmental assessments, and much more concern about how quickly we can get started extracting. So Greenpeace internationally and Greenpeace New Zealand are working on holding those rule makers to account and campaigning in those areas as well. And I think Michael just popped in the comments a note about some of the deep sea mining attempts around the world. One recently in Papua New Guinea has just gone bust, and Papua New Guinea has been left in a really bad situation following that. And we're seeing around the world countries speaking up across the Pacific. Vanuatu, Fiji are calling for a moratorium on seabed mining in the deep sea. The UK's just made changes to its approach to seabed mining that effectively creates a moratorium. So we would be really hopeful to see New Zealand starting to join that direction rather than permitting and encouraging seabed mining, whether it's in the shallow or the deep sea. So I think we've got time just for one more question, which Al asks, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to start a campaign in their community but doesn't know where to start? So the first kind of cabs off the rank.
Yeah, all right. So part of that answer is related to the earlier one, but if you refer back to the slide where I talk about relevance, I think whatever campaign you're going to do, it needs to be relevant. So, I mean, you wouldn't want to have necessarily a marathon chess game if you're trying to protect the orangutans in the jungle type of thing. I think you've got to have some more direct connection, but it comes back to conviction and determination. I think a lovely story that I tell quite often is that the black caps, so we're having a bit of a low spot, and the coach then thought that maybe it was a fielding problem. So he got an expert in, highly paid expert from America, and this person came over and watched the team training and watched a couple of games and so forth, focusing on their fielding attributes. It was a baseball coach, and after a couple of days, the coach said to this American expert, he said, so what advice are you going to give us? Any technical advice or anything? So he said, no, I don't think you need any technical advice. I mean, the boys have, got pretty good talent. He said, the only thing you really need for them is to get out of them that they want to do it. And I think if you want to do something, you will do it. And there won't be, any details or barriers that are going to stop you. It's that determination. If you believe in it and you want to do it, you will find a way.
I like it. So for those who are wondering what they can do at home on the seabed mining front, as Athol said, we've just won a pretty definitive victory in the Court of Appeal, which is really wonderful news that prevents the permit of this seabed mine. Trans-Tasman Resources, the company who are pursuing the mine, are potentially looking at going to the Supreme Court to appeal that, which is, obviously the highest court in the land and will be the last court of appeal that they can go to, and we will be there to meet them if that goes ahead. But we've been talking a lot about the fact that relying on local communities and also the iwi who have campaigned against this for years, environmental groups like Greenpeace, to be able to have the time and the resources and the energy and the finances to stand up to multinational companies who are trying to seabed mine in New Zealand just isn't good enough. So we need to look towards having a legislative ban on seabed mining in New Zealand rather than fighting each battle as it comes along. And there are lots of seabed miners waiting in the wings to see how this turns out. And I think the other thing that people can look at on the international front in terms of the deep sea miners is right now the UN is also negotiating a treaty for protecting the oceans and providing new mechanisms for putting them into sanctuaries, and support for making that treaty really strong is another obstacle for the deep sea miners. So that Protect the Oceans Treaty is also really important. I think that's all that we have time for. So I wanted to say thank you so much, Athol, for joining us today and sharing your journey with us. It was really inspiring. And I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us as participants, all of our supporters. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for everything that you do, from signing petitions to donating to writing to MPs to turning up and protesting in all the ways that you do to protect the oceans. And for the few questions that we weren't able to get to, we will make sure to send you out an email response. So don't worry if you asked a question and we didn't have time for it, we will get a response. And the last thing to say is this is our third Oceans Live event. We're going to have a couple more of them. So look out in your email inboxes for the invites to those in the coming weeks. And otherwise, enjoy your Thursdays. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to you and Ellie and your team at Greenpeace. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat, and I just encourage everybody to go out there and do your thing, because it's great fun.